Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel once again. Today we have the case of Fabiana Gandiaga. Up there, on the one that's on screen, you can see the rest of my cases. Down here you have my social networks, in case you want to follow me on any of them. And with nothing else to say, let's get started. Maria Fabiana Gandiaga was born in 1964 in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Fabiana, a 36-year-old primary school teacher, was happily married to her husband, Andres Cabana. Both lived in the Flore neighborhood. She, as we already said, worked teaching in primary schools in the morning, and in the afternoon she gave private tutoring classes. Fabiana and Andres spent their day-to-day raising Julian, their 6-year-old son. In 2001, the country faced a difficult situation. It was in that social, political, and economic context that they carried on with their lives as best they could. Unfortunately, from one second to the next, everything changed forever. It was Saturday, October 20th, 2001. That day, Julian, Fabiana's son, had a Taekwondo tournament, a sport he had started practicing about a year ago. Usually, the one who took Julian to these types of tournaments and exhibitions was his father, but on this occasion, Andres had a work commitment, so he couldn't do it. That Saturday, Fabiana accompanied her son to the tournament. Initially, Fabiana's mother was going to accompany her, but she told her it wasn't necessary. She was going to go with her friend Adriana, whose son was friends with Julian and also participated in the tournament. Finally, that day, the four of them set off in Fabiana's Renault 9 towards the Gymnastics and Fencing Club of Buenos Aires, better known as Jeva, whose headquarters is located in the center of the city of Buenos Aires. For those who don't know, this club is a huge building of more than 9 floors. And it was the first time that both Fabiana and her friend and the children went to this place. A detail that is no small thing, considering how disastrous Jeva's organization was at that time. It was very difficult to find what one was looking for in that place, without any signs. The time also didn't help. We didn't have cell phones like now. There were no Google reviews that could warn one. There were no video calls or social networks, only normal calls and text messages. And although the task of looking for the bathroom or a particular room might seem simple, the Jeva Club did nothing to facilitate it. There were no signs or directions. Upon reaching the entrance that leads to Perron Street, they entered the immense property that was not very well signposted. And if you weren't familiar with this place, it was very easy to get lost. After a few minutes of wandering around and asking people who were there, they managed to find the location where the Taekwondo tournament was going to be held. Once in this hall, they sat waiting for their children's turn, while watching others have their moment. But there was something that did not leave the families in peace, and that day it was too hot, a heat that caused headaches. It was a heavy weather, the kind that appears before the rain. Fabiana, due to the heat, began to feel bad. Her blood pressure had dropped, but her son had not yet come by. That's when she decides to go buy something to drink, a soda, to see if that would make her feel a little better. Before leaving, she left a camcorder with her friend Adriana, and she told her that in case Julian had to fight, and if she hadn't returned, to record it in her place. Upon leaving there, she encountered again this problem of being in a place too large and poorly marked. Fabiana didn't know where to go to find a kiosk or some place to buy a drink. She was wandering around again for several minutes, until she finally managed to get to the ground floor. But there was a problem. She had arrived at the entrance door of Mitre Street, which was closed. This left her even more disoriented and confused. At that moment, a cleaning employee from the club appeared to help Fabiana. He explained to her that this entrance was closed on weekends and that he would take her to the other entrance. Unfortunately, Fabiana didn't know that she was falling into this person's trap, who didn't take her to the entrance, but took her to the basement, where she was raped and murdered by this individual, and by at least one more person. Meanwhile, Adriana continued to wait for her friend, and was worried that she didn't come back, especially because her son was about to compete. Clearly, she kept recording as she had been asked, but it was strange that it took so long just for a soda. When the tournament ended and Fabiana still hadn't returned, that's when the situation escalated. Now, Adriana found herself with 2 kids, not knowing what to do or where to go to meet her friend. She contacted Andres and informed him of the situation. The man approached Jeva and helped to look for her, but there were no traces of her anywhere. Moreover, no one seemed to have seen her. After searching on their own for a while, they went to report it to the police, who started looking for her at that moment. The first thing they noticed was that Fabiana's car was still parked, so it was ruled out that she had fled on her own. In addition, as the days went by, it was also ruled out that she had fled on foot or by any other means of transportation, because her card was never used. After verifying that the car was still there, they checked the entire Jeva building from top to bottom and found no trace of Fabiana. It's important to clarify here that the area where Fabiana was taken were places that were closed for repair. So at first, the idea of searching in the basements was dismissed. Moreover, the prosecutor who took the case did not order a complete search of the place. This later led to some suspicions and rumors that the prosecutor was involved in some dealings with the club, and that for this reason, he did not carry out a search. At first, the truth is that during the first few days, Fabiana's whereabouts were a real mystery. It had been ruled out that she was in the building, and the possibility that she might have been kidnapped on the street began to be considered, or something like that, but without any clue or certainty of anything. It's only a week later that a key event occurs, and that is that Fabiana's cell phone was activated. This was being monitored by the investigators, so the conversation could be recorded. The call had been to the Jeva Club. A woman called and started talking to a guy named Fur, who was her partner at the time. Fur belonged to the cleaning sector of the club. Here we have a direct connection with the case The Lost Phone of Fabiana and someone who worked at the club. But what did this have to do with the disappearance? In those days, someone had contacted to ask for a ransom for the woman. Was it real? Immediately after Fabiana's phone was activated, the police focused again on the Jeva Club. The first thing they did was identify this guy named Fur. It was Fernando Antunes, a man who worked in the maintenance and cleaning sector of the club. When the police detained this man for questioning, he had marks on his neck and various parts of his body. He said that he had done it with wire or because he broke something. When? In reality, were these the marks that Fabiana had made trying to defend herself? In addition to asking him how he had gotten these marks, did they also ask him why his wife had Fabiana's cell phone? He said he had found it on the stairs of Jeva and didn't know who it belonged to. The investigators didn't believe a word of what Antunes was saying and arrested him as a suspect in Fabiana's disappearance. Then they went to raid the Jeva Club, this time checking the places that were closed for repairs. With the help of tracking dogs, one of them was able to follow Fabiana's trail. Her body was finally found in an electrical room. It was wrapped in garbage bags.
Society was moved when Fabiana was found murdered inside the Gymnastics and Fencing Club of Buenos Aires.
On Saturday, exactly, the police found the body in the basement of the Gymnastics Club of Grima of Buenos Aires. There, at 1100 Perón Street, only someone very familiar with the facilities could manage. That bathroom was practically closed off. There, the police found in a corner of the toilet the sandals that the teacher used that Saturday, October 20th. Gandiaga was half naked on the bottom. Apparently, she was left there after being raped. One of the detainees, a young man of 25 years, had in his possession the cell phone that had been used. Maria Fabiana, last time when she was in Jeva to talk to her husband.
The autopsy revealed that Fabiana had been raped and then mechanically asphyxiated, which caused her death. This is a snippet from the expert's report. While being raped, Gandiaga was grabbed by the neck, which caused the fracture of the thyroid cartilage and restricted the flow of air to the lungs. In that situation, the woman fell unconscious and death occurred. In addition, it was determined that the time of her death was the same Saturday, October 20th. After the homicide was confirmed, Antunes gave a first confession, saying that he had had the help of two other accomplices, Carlos Vallejo and Miguel Lopez, both also employees of the cleaning sector. Vallejo and Lopez were also arrested and charged as co-authors of the crime against Fabiana Gandiaga. One thing to note is that at the time of his arrest, Vallejo also had marks on his body, the result of Fabiana's attempt to defend herself. However, it appears that Lopez did not have these marks. The trial took place in the year 2003, and both Antunes and Vallejos were found guilty of the crime of rape, followed by the death of Fabiana Gandiaga. Both were sentenced to 21 years in prison for this. For his part, Lopez was acquitted on the grounds that there was not enough evidence to prove his guilt. The fact that he did not have any defensive marks from the victim on his body was key in this, and also the testimony of some co-workers who said that on the day of the crime. At the time when Fabiana disappeared and was attacked, Lopez was in his office on the 3rd floor, quite far from the crime scene. Even though Lopez was acquitted, he had been marked by Antunes himself as an accomplice. However, it seems that the prosecution could not find enough evidence against him, so if he did participate in the crime, he got away with it. The sentence left a bittersweet taste in the family of Fabiana, as they hoped that all three involved would be convicted. And also, they considered that the 21-year sentence was not enough, and they were hoping for the maximum sentence, which at that time was 25 years in prison. Both Andres, Fabiana's husband, and their son Julian moved to live in Spain after the crime, and it is not really known what their lives were like. Finally, the club was sentenced to compensate the family, having to pay 60,000 pesos for moral and psychological damage. 30,000 pesos were allocated for moral damage, plus a similar amount for psychological damage and psychotherapeutic treatment costs, in favor of Fabiana's sister. Prior to this, Fabiana's parents, as well as her husband and son, had already received financial compensation through an out-of-court settlement. All of this because it was considered that the club did not arbitrate the necessary means for the safety of the spectators, nor were measures taken with respect to the control of the staff. This is as far as we go with the case of Fabiana Gandiaga. Tell me what you think below in the comments. I'm reading them. If you have any more cases to recommend, you can do so to my email that appears in the description of all the videos on this channel. So here are the Patreons and channel members. Thank you for supporting me through those means. And with nothing more to say, here you have a new video. Here you have a recommended video. You can subscribe by clicking on my face and see you in another video. Goodbye.